Well, last week Parliament debated whether Britain should do more to treat drug addiction as a health issue rather than seeing it as a crime. Ronnie Cowan, an SNP Member of Parliament, suggested drug consumption rooms were part of the answer, supervised places where illicit drugs could be used under the supervision of trained staff, as they have in many European countries. Now, there was a lot of support from MPs across all parties, even though the government's Home Office spokesperson was not remotely convinced. There's already a club on Teesside where members can use cannabis on the premises, and the local police are apparently aware, but not concerned. Should there be licensed, safe places to take drugs? Kirsten, where are you then? Oh, right in front of me. Good morning. It's all going on this morning. How do they work? How would they work?
So, supervised injecting facilities or drug consumption rooms are around the whole of the world. So there are about 100 of them. They have existed for over 30 years, and the evidence for them is overwhelming. So what would happen is somebody would attend a service, it's like a health service, with their own drugs. The service doesn't provide the drugs, and inject those drugs under the supervision of trained staff, and then have access to lots of other services and treatments and goal setting that meets that individual's needs. They absolutely save lives.
They do save lives.
They do save lives, and in times where we have the highest rates of drug-related deaths at the moment, we should be looking at all evidence-based opportunities to try and reduce those deaths. They reduce the incidence of bloodborne viruses like hepatitis C and HIV, and in Glasgow, certainly where I'm working at the moment, there's a proposal for this type of facility, particularly on the back of an HIV outbreak at the moment.
Do they legitimise the taking of hard drugs for people who are there? Is there a sense of people, this is one of the criticisms, a kind of validation?
Yeah, and it's an interesting one because in a way, yes, they do enable drug using, they enable safe drug taking under the supervision of staff, so that if someone were to overdose in the premises, there are staff available to help that person.
Rather than in a derelict building somewhere.
Exactly. It's often seen as a really controversial service, but in actual fact, we already provide sterile injecting equipment to people fully in the knowledge that they're about to go away and inject those drugs in an unsafe, unhygienic, perhaps, environment. So providing people with a sterile environment in which to use their drugs is a natural step.
Pete, you're an addict. What's the problem with this?
Yeah, I mean, you make it all sound really nice. I mean, I used heroin for 15 years on the street. It was my pinnacle point was when I had a safe place to use drugs. That was my mum's house. She took away that safe place. It was only at that point that I said to myself, I need to get some help. You know, I was actually shocked at the topic, a safe place to use drugs. I thought, if that was me back in the day, then I might not be here today because I'll probably be dead. Because now the government are saying, it's okay to do what you do. Carry on doing it.
Well, they're not, but...
No, but that is what it represents. It's not, but if you think of the mind of the addict, that is what it's saying. It is okay now to do what you're doing, carry on doing it, and not only that, we'll make it comfortable for you. It's very dangerous.
We're not talking about people, though, who are using in their own home environments and they maybe have people around. We're talking about some of the most vulnerable and marginalised people in our communities who are in horrific situations. They've lost all hope. They have no self-esteem. I guess what supervised injecting facilities do is they encourage people to come in and they're welcomed in a non-judgmental environment. They're given opportunities to connect with people in a really unique way that cannot be achieved by any other service because you're meeting people.
When you say anyone using drugs is not self-esteem, what you mean is anyone who's addicted to drugs, because it's back to our definition of what is pornography. What's our definition of what is drugs? What are drugs? Alcohol, the biggest scourge of our society, for example. Fiona.
As World Health Organization has found out, 90% of people who use drugs do not use drugs problematically. What we're talking about is the 10% of problematic drug users, and within that, the most vulnerable. As you say, you were really lucky to have a home to use drugs.
No, that was cut off, and then there was years of homelessness after that. But, you know, you call it a safe place. It was hard enough to pick up a gyro without other addicts about waiting to see where you're going to score. This place you're going to be going to with drugs, you're going to have other people, addicts, waiting for you to go in so they can pounce on you. Do you know, I don't know how to call this safe.
Fiona.
I hear you, and this is anecdotal, it's not evidence-based. I'm a former problematic substance user. And this is a humane evidence-based solution where people go in, they're treated as human beings, their problems are looked at, all the other issues that are dealt with, and it's a first line for treatment. It's a first line for treatment.
There's a support service there as well. And the needles are clean.
Yeah.
And the drugs aren't cut with terrible things.
But nobody's ever died.
You get clean.
No, hold on. Nobody's ever died in a drug consumption room. Nobody's ever become infected with HIV. When I used drugs, we were using really, really dangerously. There was, at that point in my life, when I was 19, there was nothing that was going to stop me doing what I was doing. Could I just speak?
Yeah, of course.
There was nothing that was going to stop me doing what I was doing. But what happened is when I got into recovery, which is what I needed, not everybody needs that, and it only works for 7% of the population, 7%. The rest of my friends went to prison. My partner died of HIV. He would never have died of HIV if he'd had the service that's offered here. We've had 150 cases in Glasgow. The most vulnerable people without homes, have been diagnosed with HIV. This is just, it's unbelievable that this can still be happening, and that there is such a simple solution to that. It's absolutely not. Nobody's ever been diagnosed with. Nobody's ever caught.
You're getting a minority who would. I'm not saying these rooms won't be but you would get the minority. There's still a majority out there, and my concern is this is money we're talking about. You're talking about prevention. I want to talk about cure. Put money into. I work in a rehabilitation centre. Our admission, we got a great admission.
So this is not okay. This is not Karen. Is this money well spent?
So I think what we would be saying so I'm from Ad Action. We're a drug and alcohol charity, so we deliver frontline services every day. Is that drug consumption rooms in an ideal world should absolutely be part of a treatment system, because it is a method whereby it's really strong evidence base. About 30% of people that come through drug consumption rooms then move into treatment, which is absolutely what we would want. However, there are two big problems in society at the moment.
Money, one of them.
Money is one,
right.
Obviously. Drug and alcohol treatments had significant cuts in the last 4 years, about 25 to 40%. And two, the political will to do it. And actually, it's been shut down.
I'm going to ask Chris about the political will in just a second, being a distinguished former parliamentarian, rather than a former distinguished parliamentarian, the latter. Sorry, the former. So, yeah, quick points from the audience. Yeah, you've spoken the earlier debate. In front, with the beard, yeah. Yeah, no, you've got to do it. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the consumption room proposals. Drug addiction's been around obviously since the beginning of time. It's not going to go away. I think the only way to address it is with common sense approaches like consumption rooms, unfortunately.
Are you the guy who runs the club, the cannabis club?
I am indeed, yeah. I have Teesside Cannabis Club.
My goodness me, look. Obviously, you've got a lot of your clients here today.
Thank you for the support.
Yeah.
We've been open 14 months, and over the 14 months we've been open, we've actually found that we have a lot of people from all walks of life, from the age of 18 to the age of 72.
And what is it? Is it the cannabis that I might have smoked at university, or I might not have? Or is it
however you want to?
Oh, that's a cat out of the bag. Or is it the stronger strains now that we're hearing about?
The stronger strains, the weaker strains, everything is available to be consumed within the club that we provide. We don't supply it, but the members bring their own. They all pay into a system that they're happy to pay for, which pays the rent.
It's just crazy, isn't it? It's
okay. Let me take it across here to lady there with the blue shawl. I think. Yeah. Hi.
Yes.
Good morning.
What I wanted to say was that addiction, we know, as a medical person, I know as well, addiction, some people are prone to addiction, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or whatever, and it is a medical problem. We need to have these places, more of these places, so that they can be counselled, they can get the support that they need to, if they do want to get rid of it. So exactly the right thing, right attitude to take.
Okay, thank you. And in the white shirt. Hello. No, it's the lady in the white shirt. Too many white shirts going on here. Yeah, good morning.
I want to come back to the financial argument, because drug consumption rooms can actually reduce the pressures on emergency services and admission to hospitals, but they'll increase demand on sort of the services, treatment services that can sort of, so people can access support when they're accessing drug consumption rooms. One of the difficulties we have is that these are funded through two different budgets. So you might be saving in one element, but actually that money is not going to be realised to put in to provide extra support services. So we need to look at the way that we commission our services as well, and the way that the budgets are held.
Chris, I think I'm right in saying you were former chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee on the Drugs Policy. Am I right in saying that?
Well, I was former chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee for 4 years.
And you looked at drugs
and
policy.
our major inquiry was into one of our major
We've been
inquiries
talking
into
about this for
drugs policy.
decades. Lots of people have been saying we need to have an entirely new approach. Some people have been arguing for decriminalisation, taking out the hands of the criminals. Some people have been arguing for places like this. Some people have been... Why? What stops us from actually moving in a more liberal direction? Is it the media?
Well, let's go back to the report that we published in 2001 or 2. We did actually recommend safe injecting places, and we took evidence from witnesses from Switzerland, for example, where it's worked very well. In my view, that is a no-brainer. You're talking about chaotic drug users, heroin mainly, and first of all, you can only establish some point of contact with them, and try to, if they've got the will, offer them another option once you've got them in a controlled space. And the point you made earlier about making sure they don't consume contaminated drugs, and that happened a lot around here, incidentally. There's been quite a lot of deaths from it. It is a strong one. And the other thing is that they don't throw their needles all over the park or down various streets for children to pick up. And of course, there's the point about AIDS as well. So we think that, we thought at the time, we recommended at the time, it's a no-brainer. Why doesn't it happen? Why isn't there the political will? Because mass hysteria is organised by certain sections of the media, led by the Daily Mail usually, whenever the subject is broached. And politicians are afraid of that. And since politicians, of course, depend on votes for a living, they are particularly vulnerable to that. One of the things we recommended, and it was a very minor recommendation, was downgrading cannabis from a Class A to a Class B drug. That was just based on the science. It was nothing to do. And when we did, the Home Secretary accepted that and did it. And extraordinary hysteria broke out. On that one issue. I'm sorry, maybe
but also it's strange because there was a whole generation of MPs who kind of should have known that what they were talking about because they were all people who had done it as well.
Not me, Governor. I have never even smoked a cigarette.
I think I'm right in saying, I think it was on LBC, they interviewed all the Labour Party candidates and they'd all done it except for Jeremy Corbyn. And me. White shirt there, yeah.
The question about this is the failure of the state. Political parties come into power. We're a democracy. But as soon as any political party controls the state, they have an inability to be able to deal with this issue effectively. Or their good judgment is overborne by the fact that they feel that as running the state, they can't allow this. This should have been done years ago. And it's a state failure.
And in front of you,
Thank you. I live in Durham, where the Chief Inspector of Durham Constabulary, Mike Barton, has set up a checkpoint scheme to reduce low-level crime in relation to drugs. I've got nothing to do with Class A. I've got nothing to do with the police. I have my own demons, which I played the Fifth Amendment on. But he and his staff want to reduce low-level crime with drug use and drug addiction. And I don't wish to misquote him, but he wants to get at the highly organised criminal gangs involved. He wants to take the money away from drug supply, which is the lifeblood, which is why they do it.
Fiona, we're coming to the end here, but obviously we're talking about chaotic users and problem users, but there are chaotic users of alcohol and problem users of alcohol. And people debate this and shoot all these opinions, and some of the people actually refuse to acknowledge the most dangerous drug in society, don't they?
Which is alcohol, yeah.
And just to get back to your point, they're called public houses.
They're called public houses. Safe, yes. Some drug consumption rooms.
Yes, exactly.
They're called my front room on a Friday night as well. Go on, Fiona.
Mike Barton also wants, who's the Chief Constable, I'm his community advisor, he's also wanting heroin-assisted treatment. And he wants safe consumption rooms.
Could I ask a question?
Pete, last word. You are 30 seconds, honestly, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'm just saying, my concern is there's a lot of money going into this, enabling. I'm sorry, but that's what I would call it. It's enabling someone to carry on in their addiction. It is an addiction. It is an addiction. Sorry, I'm talking. Put the money into residential rehabilitation centres.
We have
where
to leave it
people can
there.
get cured.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Thank you. See you next week. We'll be in Southampton. Have a very good Sunday. Thanks for watching.